So picture this. It's April 1st, 2026, and NASA is asking the entire world to trust that this is not, in fact, an elaborate April Fool's joke.
And honestly, given everything that nearly derailed this mission in the days before launch, even the people at Mission Control probably had a moment of, wait, is this real?
Because here's what makes this genuinely staggering: four human beings are right now traveling around the moon for the first time since 1972. 54 years. That's longer than most of our listeners have been alive.
To put that in perspective, the gap between the Wright brothers' first flight and the Apollo program was only 66 years. We're closing in on a similar sized gap between moon missions. That's not a pause, that's a generational abandonment and a comeback story.
And the comeback almost got torched, literally, by the sun. Days before launch, NASA detected an X-class solar flare. And not just a flare, but a coronal mass ejection barreling toward Earth. Can you explain what that actually means for a crewed spacecraft?
Sure, an X class flare is the most powerful category. It's the sun essentially sneezing a billion tons of magnetized plasma at near light speed particles. When a coronal mass ejection hits, it can saturate spacecraft electronics, and more critically, it floods the crew's environment with radiation that bypasses the ship's shielding. We're talking elevated cancer risk at minimum, acute radiation sickness at worst.
So NASA was sitting there running the numbers on whether to put four people in a tin can pointed at the moon while the sun was basically having a tantrum.
Right. And this is where I want to push back on the triumphalist narrative a little, because analysts have outlined multiple scenarios where this mission could go seriously wrong. And the solar weather issue is just one of them. The Orion capsule's life support, navigation around the moon, re-entry at lunar return speeds, any one of those is a point of failure that Apollo engineers would have nightmares about.
Okay, but, and I say this as someone who deeply respects the risk, isn't that always the nature of a first crewed mission? Apollo 1 caught fire on the launch pad. Apollo 13 almost didn't come home. The history of human spaceflight is basically a long argument between ambition and catastrophe.
Fair, but the difference is context. NASA in the 1960s had one clear mandate: unlimited political will and 4% of the federal budget. NASA today is navigating budget fights, a shifting relationship with private industry, and a program whose architecture is literally being redesigned mid-flight, sometimes almost literally.
Which brings us to the part of this story that I think is actually the bigger deal long term. What's happening to the rocket that got them there? The Space Launch System, the SLS, this massive government-built rocket that costs something like $23 billion to develop. NASA is now looking at sidelining it.
And replacing it with SpaceX's Starship, which is the most powerful rocket ever built and is being developed at a fraction of the cost because of how SpaceX structures its incentives: rapid iteration, reusability, commercial competition. The SLS launches once, gets thrown away, and costs over $4 billion per flight. Starship is designed to land, refuel, and go again. The economics are not close.
So the rocket that's carrying these four astronauts around the moon right now might be the last of its kind, or close to it. There's something almost poetic and tragic about that simultaneously.
It's the last steamship while the diesel engines are already being built. And that metaphor extends to the Lunar Gateway, too. NASA just scrapped it. That was the planned space station in lunar orbit, supposed to be the hub for all future moon operations. Gone, replaced with plans for a permanent surface base, which is either visionary or wildly overambitious depending on who you ask.
I'll tell you what it sounds like to me. It sounds like someone decided we're done with incremental steps and we're going straight to "we live on the moon now," which is either the most exciting thing I've ever heard or a sign that someone's been watching too much science fiction.
Probably both. But zoom out for a second. What we're actually watching is the privatization of deep space unfold in real time. The government built the road to the moon in the 1960s. Now it's handing the keys to a billionaire's rocket company, while 4 astronauts ride the last government-owned vehicle on that same road. That's a genuine inflection point in the history of civilization, not just aerospace.
And the 4 people inside that capsule, right now, somewhere between Earth and the moon, they're the human face of all of that complexity. The politics, the billion-dollar bets, the solar flares, the 54-year gap, they're the ones actually doing it.
My takeaway is this. The most important thing Artemis 2 proves isn't that we can go back to the moon. It's that the system for how humanity goes to space is being completely rebuilt while the mission is already in the air. That's either brilliant or terrifying, and the answer probably depends on whether they come home safely.
And mine is simpler. Somewhere out there right now, four human beings are looking out a window at a moon that no person has seen up close in over half a century. Whatever happens next, that moment already happened. Nobody can take that back.